All right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pamela Phillips, and I am the Senior Program Assistant at the Center for Research on Women. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for this very important yet celebratory discussion on how we keep us safe through collective care and resilience in our New York City public housing communities. Let me begin by giving thanks and acknowledgement to all the labor, visible and unseen, that made this evening possible. Director Elizabeth Costelli, Creative Director Hope Dector, our Postback Fellow Sophie Kreitzberg, Program and Communications Manager Avi Cummings, ASL interpreters Glashonda Lawyer and Tricia Vasquez. Captioning will be provided by Corey Dostey. And to all our student research assistants, especially Ann Janowski, who is working with Hope and Sophie on tech tonight. I also want to thank our co-sponsor, the National Public Housing Museum in Chicago, as well as my collaborators and co-organizers for this evening's event, Ariana Faye Allensworth and Sydney Mosley of SLM Dances. Finally, a huge thanks to Janet Jacobson for her ongoing support with this project. Without her encouragement to even begin down this road, I may not be even here talking to you tonight. But before we begin, I'd like to provide you with a bit of context on how we came to be here this evening. I have a personal connection to public housing. I was born and raised in Manhattanville houses. I raised my children in Marble Hill houses, and I am no longer ashamed to say that outside of my comfort zone, my community. But it wasn't always that way. I carried that sense of shame until it became clear to me that the narrative around public housing was not my lived experience. It wasn't the whole story. Long story short, I started a project called Changing the Narrative about 4 years ago, aiming to engage residents where they live, to create spaces for them to share their stories and experiences, placing their voices at the center of these conversations. I wanted to hear their stories of community and hope and family instead of disinvestment, crumbling infrastructure, mismanagement, or maintenance repairs. Because while that may be true, it's not the complete picture. There was a human side to this narrative that wasn't getting attention. Besides, we all know how empowering speaking your truth or owning your narrative can be. This is why I am thrilled to have these leaders here tonight to talk about their communities and the work they are doing to make sure that we keep each other safe through pandemics and floods, politics and privatization, blackouts and sometimes block parties. The strength and resilience of our communities will shine bright here tonight. So let's get to it. I'm going to read in order of appearance a few bios. I'm going to shorten them a bit. One or two is a little lengthy, but you can read their full bios on our website, bcrw.barnard.edu. First up, we have Jayah Arnett. Jayah founded My Project's Runway in 2020. It is a storytelling platform that seeks to challenge stereotypes of New York City public housing residents by celebrating their distinct goals, dreams, and accomplishments. The platform highlights the people, culture, trends, and deep history that originates from NYCHA by inviting residents to share their photos, videos, and personal archives that offer more expansive representation of life in public housing. Next, we have Saundrea Coleman. Saundrea was born and raised in the South Bronx in William McKinley houses and has resided on the Upper East Side of Manhattan since March of 1992. In 2020, Saundrea graduated from NYCHA Theological Seminary, where she obtained her Master of Divinity. After 24 years of employment, she retired from the NYPD, and she is now an active leader in her community. As an activist and organizer, she co-founded Isaac's Homes Coalition to assist and educate NYCHA residents citywide. She also co-founded and is one of the co-hosts of One NYCHA podcast, which highlights public housing issues in everyday politics. And she is also the co-founder and co-host of the Power Talk TV show and has her own gospel radio show. I'm just going to highlight in her bio that she is 100% against any forms of privatization of New York City public housing. She has a more extensive bio that you can read on our website. Next, we have Camille Napoleon. Camille was born and raised on the Lower East Side and is a lifelong resident of Baruch houses. Camille has been involved in community organizing and advocacy for NYCHA residents for over 30 years. At just 18, she joined the Baruch Houses Tenant Association and became vice president of the association at 20. Currently, Camille serves on Community Board number 3, the Lower East Side Residents Committee, the Community Advisory Group for the East River Project, the Neighborhood Advisory Board, and is a member of the County Committee and the Coda Democratic Club. Last but not least, we have our moderator, Michael Partis. Michael is the executive director of the Bronx Cooperative Development Initiative, which is a nonprofit focused on advancing economic democracy through shared wealth strategies and community-based planning with working class Bronx residents. He is also the co-founder of the Bronx Brotherhood Project, a volunteer-based college success and mentorship program for Black and Latino teens and New Settlement College Access Center. He is also editing After the Fires, a collection of post-1970s South Bronx oral histories with another professor. That's our panel, and I want to welcome you all, and Jayah can take it away. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jayah Arnett. I'm the founder of My Projects Runway. Pam gave us a very, very delightful intro. My job here is to just share the narratives of people within public housing and paint a picture that expands and humanizes who we are. I grew up in Carver houses. It's going on like 16, 17 years I've lived here. And I feel like it's very important for me to share the stories of the people that come from my community and continue to pave the way and inspire people to own who they are and where they come from. I'm not sure if the host is supposed to come in and ask me questions. Here we go. You're on mute.
Jayah, thank you for sharing.
There you go.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you for sharing. Could you tell us a little bit about your storytelling project?
Sure. Yeah. So my project's runway was founded in 2020. It really started with taking a picture in the hallway because I didn't have anywhere to go. I like to dress up. And then I posted it on Instagram because I wanted to do a photo series. And then I realized after I posted that picture how impactful it was, because my caption said Project Runway. And everyone started writing me and sending me DMs about how like important it is for me to have done that, because not a lot of women my age own where they come from, what they're doing, or they'd just be too embarrassed to say that to begin with. So I took it and ran with it because I felt like this is important. I'm a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I felt like I fell right into my passion, which is telling the truths of people within my community, especially the culture in New York City. Not many will understand it if you're not from here. Um, so yeah, I just ran with my project Runway, and it's been a thing since then.
Tremendous. One more question for this moment. Could you talk a little bit about, were there some like older stories you had to pick up and some stories that you saw growing up and was like, ooh, I would love to like capture that. I would love to tell the story of that. I want to lift it up and amplify it. Were there any stories of that nature that you've worked on?
I haven't. I've worked on stories that I saw growing up, so like talking to certain people verbally, but we haven't posted those yet and shared those on the platform yet, because those are the ones that are super super dear and close to my heart. But I can say like a preview of that is when you walk outside of your building, if you are from NYCHA or public housing or been around public housing, you see like the old heads sitting on the bench, and you see like the new kids hanging out in front of the buildings, and whether they're doing things that people love to see or not, it's still part of the culture in New York City. And those are the stories that I'm going to be tackling from this point on.
I think now, Jay, we want to play a video. Could you introduce the video a little bit?
Sure. First, before I introduce the video, I'm going to introduce that this summer I worked on a project called Community Matriarchs of NYCHA that was picked up by Abrams Art Center and Photoville. And this project highlights community matriarchs in the Lower East Side, who you will meet one of them later on in this panel. And we created a short film called Helping Hands by Christopher Currents. And this is just very important and impactful. And there you go. You can take a look at it. And if you want to see the full thing, the video link will be linked to the YouTube stream. So there we go.
1 in 15 NYCHA residents work in the public service industry, social service industry. We keep New York City running, literally. We keep New York City running, but we're not treated like that.
I love all 5 of these women. I love their passion and their dedication to our community. And when we do family things, we do it together and make sure that everyone is okay.
And I just love when I see a smile on somebody's face. Somebody who probably is struggling and reaches out to me. And I tell them, don't worry about it.
This here was amazing for me because it was my first time putting in a key and opening an apartment that belonged to myself. No one but me and my child. And it felt safe and it felt like home. This was me. And right now I'm still personally living in this development and in that very same apartment. And this has become a sanctuary for myself and for my residents, because if any of them need a safe space, these doors are always open to them.
If one of us going through something, we make sure that we're there to hold each other's hands.
So we'll do an inventory, add whatever protein was provided, and then
So this is just a short intro of Helping Hands, which highlights several different women within the Lower East Side. And we went really hard trying to find the women that are actually doing the work in the community, who deserve to be highlighted. And every subject that I got to connect with I was able to learn about them. We laughed together, we cried together, we learned about their past Christmases together. It just really opened the door for me to learn about different community members throughout New York City that actually deserve to be highlighted and seen in a different light. Because when you think about public housing, when you're not from public housing, you already have a negative mindset or thought about what goes on within these iconic brown buildings within New York City.
Jaya, thank you so much for your storytelling and for sharing a portion of that of the tremendous documentary. And we'll bring you back a bit later on and have more questions. Thank you so much. But for now, I think we want to bring up to the stage Saundrea Coleman. Saundrea.
Hi, greetings all. Um, so I am Saundrea Coleman. I live in public housing, as it was stated in my bio. I grew up in William McKinley houses, and I am now on the Upper East Side. I've been down here close to 30 years, and I was in Holmes Towers, and I moved into Isaac houses. I was transferred. I waited 23 years for a transfer, and I led over 100 plus people out of a meeting, a next gen meeting in 2015, and all of a sudden my transfer became available. At that time, we were fighting against infill, and I must say I serve on Community Board 8, and we have a new social justice committee. We're embarking on our 1-year anniversary, and we just had a meeting last night regarding public housing and the medical, the dangers of living in public housing. And we had thoracic surgeon Raja Flores on as a panelist, and it was a really great meeting, and we also passed a resolution. So hopefully we can shed some more light on public housing. So so back to, I became activated in this fight against privatization in 2015, full throttle, when the infill proposal was put forth at Holmes Towers. And with that said, one of the things in the narrative was a new building, the building that they wanted to place there, would actually save housing, NYCHA. It's impossible for it to save NYCHA, one building, when at that time in 2015, the capital needs to repair or restore our homes was $2 billion. Now it's 2021 and it's at $40 billion. So we know that over a few decades, there's been a disinvestment. We know that there are systemic issues and systemic practices within public housing, and that takes you way back to the white flight and so forth. We know that public housing history, it's been segregated throughout the country, but if we focus on New York, even down here, it was this developments, because Holmes and Isaacs are on the same campus, and they were up for discrimination years ago. Even when I tried to move in 1992, I wasn't even able to see my apartment, but they told me to bring back money, a money order to rent an apartment, and I never was told an amount. So with that said, the management, it wasn't really the manager, it was the housing assistant, was setting me up to fail, setting me up to be bypassed and not get the apartment that I was, trying to rent. But so basically I'm an activist and an organizer and an evangelist. All of this is ministry for me, fighting for the rights of people. I'm also an organizer with UES for BLM. That's Upper East Side for Black Lives Matter. So I just believe in being on the right side of history. I want to fight for what's right. I want to fight for the oppressed. And public housing now, we are the new Flint. The Michelamas are like NYCHA now. Quiet as is kept. Even up the block, I live on the Upper East Side. There's a Michelama that was without gas for 1 year. So these issues in our city, we need to really work on together collectively. And I'll touch on the Holmes Isaac Coalition. We were formed in 2019, and we actually, some residents from NYCHA, from the two developments, Isaac Houses and Holmes Towers, sued NYCHA December 13th of 2019. We sued for repairs in our homes, and we sued for repairs in the common areas, because we have elevators that don't work all the time. The cleanliness, there's infestation, there's so many issues, and water damage in public housing. And you know what? If one person's apartment is okay, but if your neighbor's apartment is bad, we're all suffering together. The One NYCHA podcast was launched in 2020. And with that, what we do with there is we bring on, we actually introduce our viewership, which is not restricted to public housing residents, to everyday politics, right? Because NYCHA is a huge voting block. We talk about NYCHA issues, we bring on residents, they're able to amplify their issues, and we share it, we air it. We're not mainstream media. They get an hour instead of a 2-minute or a minute clip and a little, something on, WPX or whatever channel it is. We actually give them an hour to really, let people know what's going on in their homes. And it's been really, it's been a great ride, and as I said, NYCHA is a huge voting block. And with that said, if we get engaged in politics, if NYCHA residents begin to turn out and vote, every city-wide election, in the primary, we can put forth a candidate that we believe in and that we want to be behind, that's going to have our interests. And I'm not limited to NYCHA, fighting for NYCHA. I fight for the unhoused as well. And as I said, I fight for, injustices, with Black people and beyond, But right now, we know the hot topic is Black lives, that are dying unjustly by violence, due to police violence. That's a little bit of me.
Saundrea, thank you so much for sharing. We're going to come back to a few questions in a moment, but I think the one question right now to ask you, why do you feel it's important to bring the experiences and the perspective of a NYCHA resident to the community board, right? Like, what do you see as the value of that? Why do you see that to be important?
One of the strangest things is when I talk to residents about the community board, a lot of residents don't attend the meetings. And there's a housing committee in every community board. I pushed for the social justice committee, and I wasn't even, because I was new, like almost a year, not even quite a year in, I was told I was too new, but at the end of the day, they wind up allowing me to co-chair it because it didn't go anywhere. And that was actually titled the Racial Justice Committee. And I said, no, only way I would take the helm if it's called a Social Justice Committee, because I wanted to do all kinds of work with social justice. I believe that I know Manhattan community boards, their application is very rigorous. That could be a deterrent. And I actually looked at some other boroughs. Their application is so simple. But with ours, you have to write an essay. You have to, write about this. You have to have a bio or a resume. And some people just don't have that ready. And speaking of bios, I'm starting bio writing in my community center on tomorrow with residents, more so seniors. But that's very important because every time I talk to people, they don't have a bio. But I just think they feel there's not a place for them, but there is a place for them. Because anytime anything that's going to be built and erected in your area, the community board usually has a say, unless the mayor within feel he was going to override the EULA process. So other than that, they would have a say. At least you'll have a vote. At least you can steer residents and stakeholders of the community to line up, even though we're in a pandemic, on Zoom, right? And show up and speak. But if it's a public meeting that you can be there, we can have 100 residents in there and speak out and prick the hearts of the other 49 members, because it's 50. So say it's me and it's 49 others, we can prick the hearts of the community board to side with us. And normally your elected officials will, like your council member, will actually, vote with you. And I'll lastly say, your borough president and your city council member are the ones that appoint members of the community board. But with that said, you have to be doing something in your community. You have to be able to bring something to the table. And even if you're not active in your community, have something under your belt that you could bring to the table. So, yeah, it's important.
Saundrea, thank you. I think you made a really important point there around civic education leading to civic engagement.
Right.
And that's really important, understanding how your community board works. And I think the example of leadership, which is it could be big things like press conference and, demonstration, but it also could be small things like to get on the community board. One small step is you need a bio. And I think this the example of leadership that you shared with us by I'm going to have a bio writing class, right?
Right.
In my community, it's those big things and small things that represent servant leadership and represent the type of community level leadership that, is really important. Saundrea, thank you so much. We'll come back in a moment and ask you some more questions, but we want to transition now to Camille.
Thank
We
you.
could bring Camille up. Hey, Camille, good to see you. Could you turn your mic on?
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay.
Great to
Hi,
have you.
everyone. My name is Camille Napoleon. I am the current president of Baruch Houses, the largest NYCHA development in Manhattan. I'm a proud Baruchian, like we like to say at Baruch Houses. I represent about 2,300 units in this development, but that's over 5,000 families. I'm a voice. NYCHA's changed and mutated over the last couple of years. It's become a modern day prison. They really don't care about their residents. And so we really have a voice. We have to be able to step up, especially I have a soft spot for my seniors. I have 1,000 moms and 1,000 dads where I reside. I was born and bred here. So, I'm a voice for those who need me. A resource. If I can't get it, I'm not stopping until I find somebody who's going to help me get that, whether it's an elected official, whether it's a grassroots org, whether it takes me to organize my residents and call every media outlet there is. But I'm never going to give up the fight. My dad was the league president here. At 18, he told me, "Love, it's time for you to get involved in community." And I was on the TA as early as 18. And he told me, if you're not doing for your neighbor and you're not helping each other out, then you're not living.
Powerful quote and powerful example. Thank you, Camille. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the Tenants Council. Like, what kind of decisions and discussions happen on that body, and why do you think it? Why did you feel it was important for you to have a leadership role on that type of body?
So the Tenants Association, especially with this modern day NYCHA, residents are being ignored, literally every single day. Even the common thing, a ticket for a repair, anything. You open a ticket today, it's closed tomorrow. They come to the office, they're ignored. Phone calls are not answered. So it is super important to be involved in your Tenants Association because you become a voice for them. Like I said, not just to help mediate those problems and find solutions, but to take it outside of NYCHA if it's possible, if it needs to go in that direction.
And then a little bit about what, in Baruch houses. I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about what kind of leadership did you see growing up? So you talked about your father a bit, and I'm sure there are others. What kind of leadership did you see growing up that kind of inspired you?
My number one inspiration is always going to be my dad. He was a president for over 50 years. I'm sorry, that's a bit tough, but he was a president for over 50 years. And the greatest example of an individual, a neighbor, a friend, and a dad. I saw my dad change the fences to make sure that clinics in the neighborhood would stay open. I saw my dad and plenty of his friends, plenty of residents who stepped up and did things that mattered, so that our children and their children could have a better way of life. And orgs like Goals, Good Old Lower East Side, who's been around for years, and its executive director, Damaris Reyes. I have known Damaris since we were kids, and her fight for what's right, and her fight for fairness, and her fight to keep public housing public, and to make sure that those who had less have, was also an inspiration. So, I mean, I could go on and on with But yeah, those were the two big ones for me.
The Baruchians.
Yes, the
Uh,
Baruchians.
maybe one more question I have for you.
Absolutely.
What do you think now are some pressing issues? So you talked about repairs. Are there, I mean, I think all of us know about the capital infrastructure needs. Is there anything else that you're seeing actually that's positive that we're like, hey, this is something that's working that we need to shine a light on or tell a story on? Is there anything like that you want to lift up right now?
Absolutely. You know what? During COVID, to see the amount of people who just came out and helped others set up teledoc and and teaching our seniors how to use a computer and how to navigate a phone and move them up in what's the modern day today, right? Those things are super impactful because I think it's the new way of life, right? Is to get people to move into that. Um, but I have a list of people that truly come in every single day and just give back in those ways. They pick up medications, they help to watch people. I mean, the list goes on and on, but yeah,
Definitely, people show up for each other. Um, I
absolutely.
I grew up. I lived in the Castle Hill projects for 6 years growing up, and so I think I definitely empathize and relate to seeing people pick up each other, like pick up what you put down, and vice versa. And I think a lot of what you shared resonates as part of the spirit and culture of NYCHA. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I would like to now see if we could bring all of our panelists up and do maybe a little bit of a moderate panel discussion right now. So let's bring them all up on stage. All right. We're on stage, the virtual one. Jay, if I could come back to you a bit, talk to us a little bit around some of the storytelling. Like, how did you even go about being able to make these stories, right? Like, what kind of gave you the inspiration? Then, how did you like go about the process of talking to people, identifying them, etc.?
Well, I do a lot of social outreach on my own, and I'm involved in my community beyond my digital platform. So I feel like I know a lot of the people that I've been able to feature, and I've also been able to do a lot of outreach on my own on social media, just having random conversations with people and just spreading the word that we need to change the narrative, and not only change the narrative like everybody else on this panel has said, we need to hold NYCHA accountable for the things that they're not doing. So while my platform shares amazing stories and it shines light on the good, bad, and the ugly of public housing and the people that come from it, it also shares the necessary things that is important to residents that need to be fixed. Like we have pressing issues that get ignored, as Camille said, and it's just at a time where people are trying to take things and matters into their own hands. So when it comes to the stories and things that I choose to highlight, it's not only success stories, it's not only stories of people just navigating through life, it's like actual issues that we need to focus on and bring attention to.
I think that humanizing piece that you just shared is really important to see NYCHA residents in full, and to see them, in their everyday lives and their everyday selves, and to use that as one way for us to begin to connect, right? Not just by the identity of being a resident, but also as a person navigating inequality, navigating a rapidly changing society, is really important. So, Saundrea, if I could, I'm curious to know, from a policy perspective, so you talked a lot about, some of the disinvestment in nature. Are there some things that we should be looking at that would reverse that would create more investment, more asset building in nature? Is there anything either being proposed that's in the political sphere, or are there things that you hear residents, right, talking about that you want to lift up?
Yeah, so there's bills on the floor that just are not being passed. No Assembly member Robert Rodriguez has a bill. I know Nydia Velasquez has a powerful bill that would actually steer a lot of money into NYCHA. I believe is it 40 or 80? Somebody could shout it out, but it's for public housing as a whole for the country, but we were going to get the most of it, which it might have been even 32 billion, but I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me. But her bill is like phenomenal. And then there's other things that were out there, like the Green New Deal people were working on, right? With ALC and Bernie Sanders. So one thing is a lot of bills that are out there that just are sitting on the table. Like it takes you back to Schoolhouse Rock, right? I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm only a bill, right? Sitting, right? So it sits and some bills die. And we need to, as residents, as stakeholders, as comrades, because we have people that fight with us for public housing to keep it public, not just residents. We also have regular people that, don't live in public housing. So that's one aspect. And just, I've been up to Albany and I lobbied before in the past, and I sat with legislators, and some were in the office and some were not, and nothing's happened. And that was some years ago, so it's like a bus ride, a long bus ride. You're there all day, up early in the morning, and to no avail. Nothing has changed. So we definitely need to get our elected officials to really pay attention, because they're the ones that can actually vote for these bills, vote for them to be passed. And we also have to see where they stand, right? Hold them accountable. If they're not for public housing, if they're not, and I know the topic is public housing, but if they're not for helping the unhoused, why do we have these people in office? That's one of the things. So it falls on our elected officials. We've had years ago elected officials come stay in people public house in their homes before the former HUD was secretary, whatever, not the secretary. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know the lady I'm talking about. I can't think of her name right now, but before she went and stayed in Douglas houses and and other developments throughout the city for the past administration, we've had people stay in our homes and they've seen the decay. They've seen what was going on, and everyone has turned a blind eye, And with that said, it falls on them because they're the only ones that can make this happen. And also, public housing can't be built anymore right now, right? Because of the Faircloth Act. So with that being, I believe that's a 1937 act that was in place. If that was repealed, we can have more public housing built, because it's the only true affordable housing. As I say, we pay 30% of our income and no roommate needed.
Thank you for sharing. I definitely think the Green New Deal is probably at the federal level something folks are paying a lot of attention to. Also, we have HUD, right? And so, from Secretary Fudge to
Right.
also, New York City, New York City after Brooklyn night, we have Alika Ampry Samuel will be taking a new role in NYCHA as well. So thinking about politically, New York State has had a lot of victories, a lot of momentum, the organizing community for housing over the last several years. So bringing that organizing and that movement building approach, not just statewide, right, but also federal, and fighting for HUD and fighting for the things that we know will create investment in NYCHA. I think you raised some important points there.
Can I just add one thing really briefly? We have a federal monitor in place, right, by the former governor. We were declared a state of emergency and nothing much happened. The federal monitor, Bart Schwartz, has no power. He puts forth, he does investigations. He has former detectives working for him, as he said, because I met with his team. I haven't even met him. And they put forth these quarterly reports, and little bit of nothing is done because NYCHA doesn't adhere to it. And lastly, HUD provides $30 million a week to NYCHA, and it's a little more since the pandemic. And people are still without working boilers. People are still without gas. And I get when gas is cut off, it takes time for it to come back on. I get that. But with that said, these issues with boilers, these issues with our elevators and stuff, this shouldn't be. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Saundrea, thank you so much. Camille, I want to come to you for a moment. I'm curious, what have you seen happening in NYCHA, in particular in your development? What have you seen happening since COVID-19? Of course, we could talk about some of the kind of hardships, but I'm also curious, what have you seen in terms of how community, you talked about it a bit, how has community stepped up? What kind of other mutual aid are you seeing? Maybe we could lift that up right now.
Absolutely. So, as far as NYCHA is concerned, absolutely nothing's happening. NYCHA forgot there were human beings living in these buildings and that we exist and we deserve quality of life and protection and peace of mind. COVID just made that 10 times worse. That in its own helped us as neighbors to come together and take care of ourselves the way we've always done. Like I said earlier, we've had to form groups where, it was automatically a state when the city shut down and it became a stay-at-home order. We got up right away. A lot of our neighboring sister TAs were in that high-risk area. And so we decided that we were going to carry ourselves, but we were going to carry our sister TAs as well. And so we started to request foods and engage all of our electeds, and food was being dropped. I think Baruch Houses became the first initial food drop in the area, and we serviced all our Baruch Houses and all of our neighboring TAs. Again, I saw individuals come out, whether they were in the high-risk zone or not, and say, Camille, I'm here. What do you need me to do? And so now we're all transitioning into having our kids try to attend school online. Parents needed resources. How do I get to a laptop? How do we connect? If there's a problem, so we had teachers come out and offer to call parents and Zoom with them and help them out with their kids on a one-on-one level. We had people come out and help set up teledocs right away, pick up medications where not every local pharmacy was delivering, just to keep our folks home and safe. We had even neighbors come out and start to do light cleaning and sterilizing of like common areas in our development, just to make sure that our folks were being safe. And the TA let NYCHA know that we were disgusted by the fact that you thought that we were less and we deserved to live that way. And I saw plenty of neighbors and friends, I'm sure like many, left, but I saw their children step up and give back in a major way. I saw them bring comfort to those who lost and bring comfort to those who were struggling, because now depression was on a rise. People were being asked to stay indoors all the time. I saw elderly people come to the center and help us put together adult coloring books and things that would keep people engaged at home so they wouldn't feel so depressed. Zoom groups. I mean, what did we not create and come up on our own? But I can stand here proudly and say that I'm proud to be a Baruchian. I'm proud to be a NYCHA resident. I was super proud and humbled to see the way my community came together, not just to aid my community, but to aid all our sister development.
Camille, thank you for sharing those incredible stories. I think on the point of stories, maybe we come back to Jayah. Jayah, earlier you talked about how, like, one of the things about NYCHA in space is that you know who's in front of the building, right? You know who's sitting in particular places. Is there any other like kind of space at NYCHA that you want to talk about where you'll get interesting stories or that gives people a perspective, basketball court, or I don't know, is there another space in NYCHA you want to lift up?
Sure. I feel like within my whole community and within NYCHA communities all over New York City, you have everyone who does a little bit of everything, but at the end of the day, you know those people, you know they're either in the basketball court, they're your next door neighbors, they're in front of the building, and they're present. So if you needed someone to walk with you somewhere, there's somebody downstairs, even if they were entertained and doing their own thing, they'll take that walk with you. So I feel like no matter where you are in the city, from Harlem to Lower East Side to the Bronx, there's always a sense of community. And even though there's been a rise in gun violence and there's been all these things happening within our communities, I still feel like there's a sense of wanting to make our blocks better, wanting to make our buildings better, and us doing the work by ourselves, because Greg Russ and all these other people aren't coming in to handle these things for us. We're taking it upon ourselves to handle it. So just going back to my project's runway, that's another reason why I feel like being probably the youngest person on this panel, me taking the lead on these things from being my age is super important to share these stories so that it makes other people my age feel comfortable to be a leader in community, to be the Camilles, to be the Saundreas, to be the Pams of this generation. Because if we don't start taking control for ourselves right now, then we're going to just continue to crumble, and we need to like start putting the work in regardless of who backs us or not.
Appreciate you sharing the point of leadership and youth taking leadership. That actually segues, Saundrea. I'm curious, as an organizer, right? Are there some campaigns or some places where you think young people in particular can start to get involved? So if you're a young person and you're like, hey, I think organizing is interesting, or I want to do something to help preserve NYCHA and grow and invest in it. Are there any campaigns or any places that you think young people can loop in or enter the organizing work?
Yeah, sure. There's a place for young and seasoned, to do the work. So, even when it starts from helping with the door knocking, right? Taking note taking, interviewing residents about their conditions, hanging up flyers for us, helping us with scheduling. There's so much, and I believe that leaders build leaders. If you're a leader and you're not building someone up, then who, because leaders have followers, right? So if you're not uh empowering someone else, then you're really not doing your job. If you're not doing good work that maybe somebody want to do your job, then you're not doing a good job. So, but yeah, there's definitely a space for them, and they are needed because they can do some things that maybe I can't do, or I've done already, right? So I can train them, I can teach them, but like I said, phone banking, it's just so much. And then just teaching them, explaining to them about voting. I've done voter registration in my community. I've done census awareness in my community, and I'm medically retired, from NYPD. So I'm not working. I'm out on workers' comp. Controller still signs my check. But with that said, you still need more people because people in my age group. I'm not that much older than you, dear, but no, joke. But no, I'm older than you. But with that said, with us, and and I just turned. I'm happy to say I turned 55 yesterday, so God is good. But yes, so yesterday, yeah. So I'm happy about that, and I'm still kicking and moving around. But there's people that can do some things that I don't have to, like flyering every floor. But we have to teach them. We have to teach them, and we also have to teach them. If they don't learn this work, if they don't understand what's happening to them, then they're going to fall victim. Because I never forget when my mother she's deceased now, but when she was in McKinley houses, and I wasn't this fighter like that at that time. I'm working full time. I'm doing stuff with a football league, volunteering my services. That's what I do all the time anyway. And I would go see my mom, and she's with a robe on and thermal socks and a hat, and lived on the second floor above the boiler. And you know what? Because she didn't have heat, and they don't complain. So we have to, our youth is very instrumental, and we have to teach them. But, they have to know that who the predator is, right? Because if they don't know what's going on in the systemic issues that we are plagued with in NYCHA, then they don't know how to fight. So I would say that it's definitely room for our youth, and I welcome them, and I talk to them. I have a young guy that did a little video for me and done some things for me, and I pay him, because he's good at what he does. And as I do more, come on with me. Let's do this. So we have to, and it forms community, right? And that's what it's about, because it's not just the older people suffering, the seasoned, the middle age, or the youth. Everybody, that baby's suffering, just like that grandmama is suffering. So one suffer, we all suffer, and we can do this together. And organizing it's easy to do. It's easy to learn, but you know what? One thing with organizing, you have to stay in it. And that's the thing. And it has to be new campaigns, right? So fighting for funding, fighting for repairs, and that all is intertwined. But, fighting Greg Russ, right? Because we don't want him to privatize all of our stock, right? We want public housing to remain public. Yeah, I'll stop.
Saundrea, thank you so much. For the folks in the audience, we want to begin to take some of your questions. So if you're in the audience, begin to drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll begin to ask the panelists those questions. So we're looking to get you all involved in a moment. Camille, I do want to pose a question to you really quick. What do you think is one thing that you want to win, right? As the calendar year is closing, what's one thing you think your tenant association is really focused on? One thing that you all are trying to win?
One thing that we are completely trying to win, which is the utmost important, is to make sure that public housing stays public. I cannot afford to live outside of my NYCHA apartment. I'm rapidly seeing, living in the Lower East Side, how our neighborhood is changing. Gentrification is taking over. We can't afford a lot of the local supermarkets. So our number one priority is planting our flag and letting them know we are here. We deserve to be here, and we're staying here. So whether that means we're fighting that good fight, whether it means we're organizing, whatever it takes, people need to know that we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're putting up that fight. So maintaining public housing public is absolutely of the utmost importance for us right now.
You said a word there, Camille. Thank you so much. Let's take a few questions now. We got a few coming in. Thank you all for sharing, and continue to share those questions. I guess, maybe we'll, on Saundrea, what does a fully funded public housing program look like? Maybe we'll go Saundrea, then Jayah, then Camille. So what does a fully funded public housing program look like to you?
What a fully funded public housing program looks like is what it once was. Beautiful greenery, cleanliness, community. Your neighbors looked out for one another. You weren't systemically harassed by management, and you had repairs. We used to get paint jobs every 3 years, like clockwork. They bang it on your door, and you gotta fix all your furniture and bring it in the middle of the living room and so forth. You don't get a paint job now. You have to put in a ticket and beg for a paint job. So just all the repairs done, and we're living in humane conditions. A fully funded NYCHA would also attract, because it's not just low income people that live in public housing. You have low to moderate income. So it would attract higher income people that can fit, be able to fit the criteria, and they can move in. Because whatever you make, if you're already in there, they're not going to remove you out. If you want to stay, they're going to let you stay, and you're just going to pay that 30%. But it would attract even different set of people, a little more higher income people, because it's the true affordable housing. So it would be just a better place to live, a better place to raise a family. It's generational. So why can't we not preserve it? I'm here. I left one development. I left McKinley's. I moved into Parkchester for 2 years. When NYCHA called me, guess what? I packed my bags and I moved downtown, because I understand the long game, right? I want to be able to, pay 30% of my income, live in affordable housing with lighting and everything else that I'm entitled to, heat, hot water, and so forth. But sadly, we don't have that. But it would look like it should. Repaired and just livable, and not like we're living now. We live in a third world country, literally. One of the richest cities that you would think that poor people are not living in, or not. I don't even want to use the word poor, but we're living as if we're dirt poor, and everybody's not, because of the conditions.
I would I'll follow up and say I would agree with Saundrea and say a fully funded NYCHA complex looks clean. It smells clean, because I feel like that's a lot of our problem in my building and the conditions that we have. Like, as soon as you step into the lobby, you already know, like, they didn't clean the garbage. So not only that, the elevators work, the floors get mopped and cleaned. Just making it look good and feel good, because I feel like when the people who live and exist in these buildings start to see how we're treated and the conditions that we continue to live in, you start to add to those things. Like, some people within these complexes don't know how to not litter or not do certain things, because these are the things that they see around them and the things that they are conditioned to believe they deserve. So I feel like a fully funded complex or NYCHA complexes is also like playgrounds that are safe to play in, things that are bright and colorful that make kids want to go into them. Right now, I live in Carver houses. We just got a fitness zone that opened pre-pandemic. And I feel like more of those things need to be out there and provided for us, because low income housing houses majority Black and brown people. And a lot of us are the people who get sick faster. We are the people that need medical attention faster than other people within society. And I think we need to start building things and getting things that we deserve, especially running water. I can just tell you an example. Yesterday, we had no water all day. There should not be anybody in public housing that doesn't have water all day. I couldn't even flush my toilet. Like, that is not fair. And a lot of the people, like Saundrea said, it's 30% of your income. It doesn't matter what job you have. You should be able to have a life that's you feel deserved and happy living in this space, because you work hard to pay for the rent every month.
That's right.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead, Camille.
that's okay. I was gonna say that a fully funded public housing for us looks like a life-saving mission. Um, I have residents that are passing away from dealing with chronic mold and lead behind walls. I have residents that are passing from just not having heat since Hurricane Sandy. So for me, it is completely life-saving to fully fund NYCHA and to control these leaks behind these walls that are then causing mold, that are then growing in people's lungs, that are then taking those lives. So fully funding NYCHA means saving lives.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Camille. Saundrea, could we come back to you for a moment? I think we've talked a bit about privatizing public housing. I think there's two things perhaps you could share more. One, when we say that, what are we saying, right? So when we say privatize public housing, what exactly would happen if that was the case? And then maybe some consequences of that. This is what it means to privatize it, and if that happens, here are some of the consequences. You think maybe you could share a little more about that for us?
Sure. So I'm going to step into the infill for a second, like the infill proposal. If that, we actually won and fought that for 4 years. And I actually submitted a letter that was written in 2016 and 2019 at a community board meeting. And Manhattan Borough President took that letter and sued the mayor to go through the ULIP process. So with infill, if infill is put, that's a form of privatization. If infill is put on your ground, it takes away either your playground, your parking lot, or a space. And then you're blocking the sun, right? You're also adding more people into the community. You also are in danger with development, right? We just had, when they were trying to do that a couple of years prior, we had a crane fall on the Upper East Side, 2 blocks from where I live at. And some people were killed and so forth. And we knew the crane was going to fall. We knew this. We were looking at it. It was just scary. So now moving fast forward to privatization or form of like RAD, right? RAD PAC. They you have a new management, right? You have a new lease under RAD. And basically with RAD also, with that said, the consequences is you get a new lease, you're still at 30% of your income, but you can easily be evicted. And then the benefit for the management corp that takes over is they can actually rent that apartment out for market rate if they choose to. So, and NYCHA always retains the land in the building, right? So they're not selling off the building or can't sell off the land. So they work with these leases or however they do it. But these forms of privatization are not great for us. And it also, okay, so you hear the narrative that there's 400,000 people in NYCHA. Everyone knows that it's much more than that, right? Because there are people that are not on the lease that lives in people's household. But as the RAD conversions happen, the number decreases, right? And NYCHA is no longer responsible for any of the capital needs. So it's a win-win for them because it offloads their responsibility to repair, to maintain, to clean, and they have more money, yet and still, but we don't see anything. So for me, I feel, and a lot of the people like me that know about privatization, we know that there's no benefit. The private developer benefits, the management court, the new management, like call it out, Wavecrest and other ones. I mean, if you look at Ocean Bay in Queens with the high eviction rate, that's another thing. Over 80 families were evicted under the RAD conversion. So you can't give me a new sink and a new refrigerator, because all of those things I'm entitled to anyway under NYCHA anyhow. So with that said, there are no benefits but to the city of New York, because they don't have the responsibility of the capital needs for that development, if whatever they, convert, and the developer. And you know who hurts? The people that's living in NYCHA. I hope I kind of made it as plain as I could.
Definitely. And I think for the audience, just a few things for you all to know. When we say Europe, right, we're talking about the city's land use process, right? The city goes through a process to determine how land is used, and much real estate and land use is of highest and greatest value, right? That's the kind of direction it should go.
Right.
So I think part of what we're talking about here is how do we define, right, value? How do we define usage? How does community become more involved? So for an example, NYCHA residents could have more self-determination. And I think the other thing that we heard Saundrea bring up is RAD. And so when we talk about RAD, we're talking about the rental assistance demonstration, right? The rental assistance demonstration was a program created several years ago to have private management and financing come into NYCHA. And so what it creates is a NYCHA that's privately managed, and an infusion of funds is the argument, but reduce what's the public sector's kind of role in that. So the privatization of NYCHA from ULIP, which changes land use and determines zoning and these other things in our New York City communities, to then the policy decision to use RAD, right, as a way to address the capital issues that NYCHA had. Those are some of the, just to give a little context to some of what Saundrea shared.
Can I put a pin in something, if that's okay? Okay.
More than okay. Go ahead.
So the ULIP process goes through the community board technically, unless your mayor overrides it, which he's tried to do, and he did it with us with infill, and he's probably done it in the past. And RAD was under the Obama administration. So I just wanted to put a pin in it. That's it.
The pin has been placed for sure. Maybe Camille, if we could come to you actually, are there any specific programs or services that could be implemented to benefit the residents? I wonder if Camille and Jayah, after, if you all want to take that question on, any specific services or programs that could be implemented?
I think there's a bunch of things that can be implemented, but one of the things that's really important is to preserve public housing, because with public housing, most of the NYCHA judges honor hardship, and a lot of our residents, and that's why you have in these programs like RAD or PACT, you no longer have access to these NYCHA judges who do honor hardship and will aid a tenant in making sure that they put a social worker in place, that maybe the tenant needs a one-shot deal, that's provided. With a NYCHA judge, you can get those services and they're in place. If we rat or pack, you lose that access. And so those new judges don't honor hardship. Can we put a lot of other programs in place? Absolutely. But I think it all starts with, again, preserving public housing and making sure, the good thing is in our area, we have a lot of major grassroots orgs. I'll mention a few. Good old Lower East Side, they go above and beyond for NYCHA residents. Whether it's representation at court, they're magnificent at organizing when we need to get that done. We had a huge demonstration this past summer to get Grugress out of his seat. So they're amazing. They're also amazing when making sure that TAs and NYCHA communities, whether it's uptown, downtown, we all stick together and we see each other as one. Other orgs that in this area that help amazingly are like Henry Street Settlement and Grand Street Settlement. These are like grassroots orgs that help to provide our seniors with much needed medical and food delivery at home outside of what we do separately. They're doing great things right now with mental health, which is a big issue since COVID happened for all ages. And so can we always continue to add stuff to aid our folks? Absolutely. But it's always going to start with keeping public housing public.
Yeah, to feed off of Camille, I agree. Like, we need to keep public housing public. A couple of things I would want to see, because I'm a huge advocate on social justice and just what life is like growing up in public housing. Sometimes you don't always have the best options because you already start to see yourself as this like failure or this statistic. So things I would like to see is like college readiness within the community centers, or people who just got released from prison, helping them get their resumes together and helping them find resources that can put them in better directions to get their life on track. So those are just a few things that I would like to see and things that I've trying to get started on my own. Also, like Saundrea, I want more young people to be involved in voting. So trying to make pamphlets and things that like you can educate people on who is running. Like right now we have an election and people my age don't care about it. So I've tried to create this campaign called Lace Up, Line Up, and Vote, because Gen Z is super into sneakers and all these things. So I encourage people to wear their flyest fits to go show up to the polls and take a picture. So like these type of things that get residents excited, but also allow them the opportunity to get educated and take a step in the right direction, especially when it comes to people getting released from jail and our young Black men who kind of get taken into the system with a blind eye is like super important to me. And I hope to use my platform to continue to shed light and use conversations like this to implement programs, but we need to keep public housing public to do that.
Jayah, thank you so much. Lace up, line up, and vote, right? Meeting people where they're at to mobilize them into the type of civic action that's important. That's so critical. Thank you for sharing all those thoughts. So what we want to do now, we'll give one more question to the panel, and then we'll transition into a video. And after that video, we'll close out. For the panel, one question. I think we've talked a little bit about elections. Camille's mentioned Greg Russ, and just for the folks in the audience, that's the current head of NYCHA, right? So the question is, there's going to be a new chairperson of NYCHA. Let's pretend it's one of you. So maybe we could do a round robin, and we'll do Camille, then Saundrea, then Jayah. If you were the next chairperson of NYCHA, January 1st, 2022, what's the first thing you do, or what's the first few things that you do? Camille, Saundrea, then Jayah.
Invest in infrastructure. We need to strengthen our homes within so that people can thrive. And once people thrive and they're healthy again, they can function and be a part of a healthy society. And once you have people feeling their best, you change everything, even the mental, definitely investing in infrastructure, hiring people like Jayah with her great idea, making sure she's, so I'm supporting her as the new president of NYCHA, and get these young folks out to vote, because I'm with her on that. If we don't educate our young folks and get them to the polls, we don't make the necessary changes for our future. So definitely strengthening my community by keeping young, powerful minds engaged in what it means to live in public housing, and then strengthening its infrastructure is everything.
This is Saundrea or me?
It's me. It's
Okay,
me.
go
Okay,
ahead.
no problem. Yeah, so for me, if I was the next housing chair, which I have been saying, it should be a public housing resident, right? Who knows what's best for us than us, right? So for first starters, I won't be moving out. I will be living in the trenches with everyone, right? Because whatever they're going to pay me, it does not matter. I will be still living in public housing and paying 30% of my rent and being able to, and that's a game changer, right? So and they're not going to be able to just fix my apartment up and not everybody else's. So I would advocate extremely hard to make sure everyone's home is livable. I would make sure that the dialogue with stakeholders, the NYCHA stakeholders, the residents, is really true, right? Not no decision making will be done without them being at the table. And not just resident council presidents, want regular leaders as well, right? Without the title that's doing the work. I want them in that office with me too, making those decisions. I will also hire, as I know, 700 strong, a group of them. Some of them live in NYCHA. They can repair NYCHA. They've met with the current administration and said they can do the work, and they won't do it. So give it to them, because majority of them live in public housing. And yeah, I'm going to stop there, because my vision is, if I ran, which I plan to run one day, and I'm not going to say what it's for, I'm staying in public housing, and it will be a citywide office, but I'm going to stay in public housing, and that's going to be part of it, because I want to live with the people, and I want to make change from within. You can't make change when you move out the neighborhood. You can't make change when you're not suffering anymore. And that's what I would do if I was the next NYCHA chair. Thank you.
I agree with both of these women. I think what I would want to do is, one, fix the infrastructure. I would want to make sure everybody's space is livable, because it's just unfortunate that some people can't even breathe fresh air within their own apartments. Not only that, I would want to create jobs and spaces for people, like Saundrea said, that actually live in these buildings and these communities, that want to do the work. I see women in my own building that take the mop and they mop the floor. I want to be able to hire people that actually want these spaces clean and not like sit around all day and just collect a paycheck. On top of that, I would want to create groups, especially of young people, who can hold older people accountable, who are in office or who are in charge of making these decisions, because if we don't hold them accountable, then we won't get anything done. So just making sure to continue to put the younger generation at the forefront, because we're going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and if we aren't pressing for these issues, then nothing will get fixed. So on top of that, the first thing I would actually do is throw away the blueprint, because you got to get rid of what happened in the past before you can even get started to change the future. So that's where we are.
Encourage everyone to go Google, if you're not familiar with it, the blueprint for NYCHA, which Jayah just referenced. So what we're gonna do now is we have one more video to play. Thank you, Saundrea, for sharing this video. So we'll play one more video, and then we'll get to our closing.
Thank you all for coming out. we go back into our hearing from our HP Action lawsuit that we filed on December 13th of last year. I am Saundrea Coleman, one of the co-founders of the Holmes Isaacs Coalition, an entity that was formed due to the lack of adequate funding and repairs for all NYCHA campuses.
Greetings. I am Saundrea Coleman. I was born and raised in the South Bronx. I reside on the Upper East Side of Manhattan since 1992. I am an evangelist, activist, organizer, and well-known leader in my community. I have a long history of volunteerism. I first volunteered when I was in high school at Daughter of Jacob's Nursing Home. I did my internship in 2017 at Isabella Nursing Home, and I served there up until the pandemic. I still serve virtually from time to time. In 2020, I graduated from NYCHA Alliance Theological Seminary, in which I obtained my Master of Divinity degree. I am a consecrated deaconess in the AME Zion Church and a longtime evangelist. I have a gospel radio show on WRNPraise.net, which is called the Saundrea Coleman Radio Show. I am medically retired from the NYPD since 2015, where I was a payroll supervisor. I served over 24 years. I am a co-founder of the Holmes Isaacs Coalition, which assists and educates NYCHA residents citywide. I am a co-founder and co-host of the One NYCHA podcast, which highlights public housing issues and everyday politics. I am an organizer of the UES for BLM Vigil that is held at Carl Schutz Park. We have been gathering there since June 2nd in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. I am a co-host of the Power Talk TV show, which airs on Millennium TV. I am a member of my local community board, which is Community Board 8, in which I am also a co-chair of the Social Justice Committee. That committee was launched. It's new. It was launched in December of 2020. I am the executive producer of a podcast called Stan Morris Hip Hop, Health, and Politics Show, which has rotating co-hosts. It's doing really well. My newest venture is for me to launch my own podcast, which I plan to launch by June of 2021. It is called Justice, Politics, and Restitution with Saundrea Coleman. So I am a lady, once again, that wears many hats. It's a lot of things I didn't, share, but I just want to help people. I want to be on the right side of history, and I just want to be there for people, and sometimes just coming alongside people that are too weak to fight. I'm there for them because I know this is what humanity is about. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Andrea. Let's close out now. So, Saundrea, Camille, Jayah, any upcoming projects or ongoing work that you want to let us know about?
I guess I'll go. You can continue to watch and hear the stories of public housing residents on my project's runway on Instagram and on my website. And in the near future, I will have a children's book about little girls who grew up in public housing. So that's that.
We are continuing to feed our folks and fight for them. But we are engaging our local artists from Baruch and neighboring developments to put some amazing, beautiful artwork on some of these flood walls going up around our development. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and with my community, we're still going back and forth to court. Our court case is still going on since December 13th of 2019. I will still have my boots on the ground in any borough, every borough, helping residents, fight for just humane conditions. And as I said, I'll be doing the bio. That's a new thing. The bio writing starts tomorrow in my senior center. I don't like to say senior center, the Isaac Center, because it's for everybody. That's once a week. And my podcast was actually paused when that was filmed because I was working out the tweaks with Hip Hop Health and Politics with Stan Morris, but I executive produced that, so I'm still getting him deep into that. And with that said, I'm always here for anyone that has a good fight. Holler at me. I'm around. My social media handles are easy to follow. Saundrea Coleman. It's easy to find me. Google me, whatever. I'm there. And if not, I can send people there. I just want to help people. Like I said, that's what it's about. I want to be on the right side of history. And I just continue to just do work in my community because that's the main thing. And try to do my best to hold NYCHA accountable. And also whatever new administration that's coming in, Gracie Mansion will be there. Sure that, people are living decently in public housing. Thank you.
Jayah, Camille, Saundrea, thank you all so much. Thank you all for allowing me to be your moderator. And with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Pamela. Pamela, can you close us out?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. This was like, I couldn't have dreamed of a better conversation. We touched on just about everything I could imagine us to touch on. I feel like we have given the audience a sliver of the talent and community that exists in public housing. These communities are worth saving, investing in. I believe that if we could open this up to more people, we'd hear a lot more wonderful things. And I'm proud of the work that each and every one of you are doing. Just to say real quickly that the co-organizers who weren't able to be here tonight, and just like to meet you guys and to just give a snippet of what they're doing. They're also doing some wonderful work around public housing and oral histories. I am so happy that we are trending and that people are beginning to talk about not just what's wrong, but what's right. So Sydney Mosley of SML Dances has an installation down at the High Art Center, and I'll try and drop the link real quick. But she's also done some work around oral histories at Lincoln Center, and she carries those elders along with her through this project. And the name of it is Purple, and I'm going to drop a link in there. And our other co-organizer, Ariana Faye Allensworth, has a website called Stay in Power, and I'm going to look for that real quick too, just to drop it in the link. I think that we should all check out each other's work. I think that we should all uplift each other's work. As you guys have said, there are 600,000 people in public housing. So even if 1,000 of us wanted to do these projects, it wouldn't be enough. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. Michael, thank you so much for moderating, and thank everybody who attended for coming. Thanks again, everybody. That's it.
One more thing before everybody goes. We also have an installation. Camille, she has my favorite picture, a part of our installation. It's located in the Lower East Side. So if you guys want to go check it out, it's Community Matriarchs of NYCHA. And they're literally all around the Lower East Side, but I can also share the link and you can map out where each location is at.
Yeah, let's try and drop these links in the chat real quick.
And I just want to say, and I don't think I said it in the beginning, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on this panel. I really appreciate what you all put together. I know it takes a lot to get something produced, right? It's a lot of work. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Humbled for the opportunity, guys. Thank you so much.